Have you ever wondered how far someone would go in the pursuit of power? How many lives can be shattered by a single person's thirst for control? The story we're diving into today is shocking, and I guarantee it will make you think. Imagine a queen so powerful she believed she could challenge the very gods. A woman who wouldn't hesitate to manipulate, betray, and even kill to maintain her grip on the throne. It sounds like something straight out of a blockbuster movie, doesn't it? But this is a true story, one that unfolded thousands of years ago. The tale of Jezebel in the Bible is a cautionary one that echoes through the centuries. In the book of Revelation, her malignant influence is compared to that of a false prophetess in the church of Thyatira. This comparison isn't random. Just like the Jezebel from the Old Testament, this figure in Thyatira was leading people astray. She seduced them into idolatry and immoral practices, pulling them away from the right path. Jezebel's impact was devastating. It shook the very foundations of an entire nation's faith. She wasn't just a queen. She was a corrupting force who used her position of power to manipulate and control. Her charisma and cunning were potent weapons, capable of influencing even those who should have been the strongest in their convictions. Her story is a stark reminder of how easily power can corrupt and how one person's choices can have widespread, destructive consequences. But the mention of Jezebel in Revelation isn't just a historical footnote, it's a timeless warning. She represents the persistent temptation to abandon our moral principles in exchange for immediate gains, whether it's wealth, status, or influence. In our modern age of social media and digital influencers, this lesson takes on a whole new level of relevance. It shows how influence, when wielded for nefarious purposes, can be just as dangerous today as it was back then. Jezebel's case is a powerful illustration of the dangers of misused power and corrupted influence. Her story serves as a mirror, forcing us to examine the power structures in our own society. Who are the modern-day Jezebels? Who are the figures using their influence to divert people from ethical and moral values for their own selfish gain? It's a question worth pondering. Jezebel's narrative invites us to look deeper into the motivations behind human actions. It reveals how an insatiable quest for power and control can lead to the destruction not just of an individual, but of an entire community. It's a vivid reminder that our individual choices always have collective consequences. Every decision we make ripples outwards, affecting the people and the world around us. However, Jezebel's legacy also highlights something incredibly important: the power of resistance. Amidst all the corruption and pressure, there were those who stood firm in their convictions. They refused to bow, even when faced with persecution and threats. These figures of resistance are just as crucial to the story as Jezebel herself. They prove that it is possible to maintain integrity, to hold on to what is right even in the most adverse circumstances. Their courage shows us that light can still shine in the darkest of times. Ultimately, Jezebel's story reminds us of the cyclical nature of power and corruption. Throughout history, we see similar patterns repeating themselves. Leaders emerge who use their influence to manipulate and control populations, often for personal enrichment or glory. Recognizing these patterns is the first step toward breaking the cycle. By understanding the past, we can better navigate the present and build a more just and ethical future. Thanks for watching. If this story made you think, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into history's most fascinating and cautionary tales. See you in the next video. Have you ever felt like you're stuck in a loop, making the same mistakes over and over? It's a frustrating feeling, but what if I told you the first step to breaking that cycle is simply recognizing the trap before you fall into it? The ancient story of Jezebel offers a powerful lesson in this very idea. Her tale is a call for constant vigilance, a reminder that corruption can creep into the most unexpected place, institutions meant to protect and guide us. It teaches us to stay alert, to be ready to identify and resist harmful influences, no matter where they come from. Now let us dive into the core of Jezebel's story, the divine judgment that came down upon her. This wasn't random, it was a direct response to her wicked and manipulative actions. One of her most infamous crimes was the murder of Naboth, a brutal act driven by pure greed that ultimately sealed her fate. You see, King Ahab, her husband, desperately wanted Naboth's vineyard. It was a prime piece of real estate, right next to the palace. But Naboth refused to sell, citing that it was his family's ancestral inheritance. Ahab went home sulking like a child who didn't get his way. This is where Jezebel stepped in. Seeing her husband's distress, she took matters into her own hands. She orchestrated a wicked scheme, falsely accusing Naboth of blasphemy and treason crimes, punishable by death. She had him executed, and just like that, the vineyard was Ahab's for the taking. This single incident wasn't just a land grab. It was a shocking display of Jezebel's corrupt nature and her complete disregard for justice and human life. It was this act of cruelty that triggered the chain of events leading to her dramatic downfall. The prophet Elijah, a man of God, was sent to confront Ahab and Jezebel. He delivered a chilling curse, a divine decree that made it clear their actions would not go unpunished. And this curse wasn't just for Jezebel, it extended to her entire family line. Elijah's prophecy was shockingly specific and graphic. He foretold that Jezebel would meet a violent and humiliating end, with dogs consuming her body in the very place where Naboth's blood was spilled. This wasn't just about divine vengeance, it was a powerful public statement for all of Israel. It was a declaration that no one, not even the queen, was above divine law. Justice might seem slow, but it is always certain. Jezebel's judgment serves as a powerful example of the biblical belief in divine retribution. It underscores the profound idea that every action has a consequence. Those who abuse their power, who manipulate and harm others for their own gain, will eventually face a reckoning. This concept of final accountability before a higher authority is a cornerstone of many belief systems. It's the idea that, in the end, truth and justice will prevail. So what can we take away from this intense story today? It's a timeless warning about the dangers of unchecked ambition and the corrupting influence of power. It challenges us to look at our own lives and ask ourselves if we are using our influence for good or for selfish gain. Are we like Naboth, standing firm in our principles, or are we tempted to cut corners like Jezebel to get what we want? The story of Jezebel isn't just ancient history. It's a mirror reflecting our own choices and their potential consequences. It encourages us to live with integrity, to be vigilant against corruption in all its forms, and to trust that justice, in the end, will always have the final word. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into timeless tales. See you in the next video. The idea of divine judgment is a recurring theme in many religious and ethical traditions, a powerful reminder that actions have consequences. The public nature of the prophecy against Jezebel and how it unfolded served a dual purpose. It wasn't just about her. It was a clear and public warning to anyone else who might be tempted to follow her path. It showed that earthly power, no matter how immense it seems, is ultimately temporary and subject to a higher authority. Jezebel's story is also a stark illustration of how the actions of leaders can ripple outwards, creating waves that affect everyone. Her choices didn't just seal her own fate. They had profound and lasting consequences for her family and the entire kingdom of Israel. It's a powerful lesson that those in positions of authority bear a special, heavy responsibility for their conduct. The prophecy against Jezebel wasn't an isolated event. It was a pivotal moment in a much larger narrative of reform and purification sweeping through Israel. The prophet Elijah, acting as a divine spokesperson, was on a mission to steer the people back to their core beliefs and principles. In this context, Jezebel's judgment was a necessary and dramatic step in this process of national renewal, a way to cleanse the kingdom of corruption. Finally, Jezebel's story brings up a fascinating tension between human free will and divine sovereignty. Jezebel made her choices freely, exercising her own will every step of the way. Yet the prophecy shows that her choices and their consequences were not beyond the reach of a larger divine plan. It's this complex interplay that makes her story so compelling, a narrative that continues to intrigue and challenge readers and scholars even to this day. Now, let's turn to General Jehu, who emerges as a crucial figure in this biblical drama. He wasn't just another military leader. He was chosen as the divine instrument to execute judgment against the house of Ahab. His rise to power wasn't a coincidence. It was the result of a divine anointing, marking him as the executor of heavenly will. This sacred duty placed him right at the heart of a plot of vengeance and divine justice. Jehu's mission was clear and absolutely relentless. He was to eradicate the corrupt lineage that had plunged Israel into sin and idolatry. With a fierce and unwavering determination, he began his campaign by executing the son of the infamous queen. This act wasn't merely a political power play. It was the direct fulfillment of a prophecy that had been pronounced long before. Jehu's approach was direct, swift, and utterly remorseless, reflecting the immense gravity of the task he had been given. He advanced with the unshakable conviction of a man acting under divine orders, showing no hesitation or doubt. His determination wasn't just his own. It was fueled by a deep sense of righteous anger against the systemic corruption that had taken root in the kingdom. His pursuit of justice didn't stop there. Jehu then turned his attention to Jezebel herself. He confronted her at her palace in Jezreel, where she had famously adorned herself, preparing to meet her fate. The confrontation was brief and brutal. At Jehu's command, her own attendants threw her from a window, a shocking end for a once powerful queen. Her death was a graphic fulfillment of the prophet Elijah's words. This wasn't just a simple coup or a political assassination. Jehu's actions, though violent, were framed as a sacred duty, a divine purge of a wicked regime. He wasn't just seizing power for himself, he was seen as restoring divine order to the land. Every step he took was a step toward fulfilling the prophecy against the entire house of Ahab, a house that had become synonymous with idolatry and moral decay. Jehu's role as the cleanser of Israel is one of the most intense and dramatic arcs in the biblical narrative. It raises profound questions about the nature of justice, obedience, and the use of violence in the name of a higher cause. His story is a powerful reminder that in this ancient worldview, human history is often seen as a stage where divine plans are carried out through chosen individuals, for better or for worse. It's a complex and challenging part of the story, but absolutely essential to understanding the full scope of this epic narrative. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history and scripture. Have you ever wondered what happens when a nation's leaders become completely corrupt? The Bible tells a gripping story about this. Centered on a man named Jehu, he believed he was chosen to cleanse his nation from a dark influence that had poisoned it for years. Imagine the final showdown, Jehu, a determined warrior, versus the fallen queen Jezebel. The air crackles with tension. This wasn't just a fight between two people. It was a clash of civilizations. It's the old corrupt world against a force of radical change. As Jehu stormed the palace, he didn't find a queen begging for forgiveness. No, he found a defiant woman, adorned in all her royal splendor, proud and unyielding to the very end. This moment symbolized everything Jehu was fighting against. The story takes a dramatic turn when the queen is thrown from her window. This wasn't just a physical fall. It was the symbolic end of an entire era of idolatry and injustice that had plagued the land. Jehu, acting as the executor of what he saw as divine justice, showed absolutely no mercy. His actions were swift, decisive, fulfilling a prophecy spoken years earlier by the prophet Elijah. The tale gets even more intense. The queen's body, left in the street, was devoured by dogs, exactly as the prophecy had foretold. This gruesome fate served as a stark and powerful warning about the consequences of defying divine will. When Jehu saw this, it wasn't a moment of horror for him, but one of validation. He saw the prophet's words come true, which only strengthened his belief that his violent mission was righteous and divinely sanctioned. With the old rulers gone, Jehu's rise to the throne wasn't just a political shift. It was a promise of a spiritual reset for the entire nation. His leadership was meant to bring Israel back to the core values it had abandoned. It was a new chapter, born from bloodshed but carrying the hope of renewal and a return to faith. But to truly understand Jehu's rage, we have to rewind a bit and look at the story of Naboth's vineyard. This single episode reveals the shocking depth of corruption under the previous rulers. King Ahab and his queen Jezebel. Naboth was just a regular guy, a simple landowner. But his piece of land, his ancestral inheritance, became the center of a conflict that would expose the boundless greed and cruelty of Israel's most powerful couple. He refused to sell the land his family had owned for generations, and this refusal set off a chain of tragic events. King Ahab's desire for this vineyard, which was conveniently located right next to his palace, wasn't just a passing fancy. It was the perfect symbol of unchecked power and greed, the desire to take whatever you want, simply because you can. Ahab was like a spoiled child when Naboth said no. He went home, sulked, and refused to eat. Seeing her husband so upset, Queen Jezebel stepped in. She told him to cheer up and promised she would get him the vineyard. What she did next was pure evil. She orchestrated a conspiracy, falsely accusing Naboth of cursing God and the king. She had him framed and executed, all so her husband could have a garden. This brutal act of injustice didn't go unnoticed. The prophet Elijah confronted Ahab, condemning him for the murder and theft. He delivered a chilling prophecy. Just as dogs had licked up Naboth's blood, so too would dogs lick up Ahab's blood. And as for Jezebel, he foretold her grim end, that dogs would devour her by the wall of the city. This prophecy hung over the royal house for years, a ticking clock counting down to their demise. It's this very prophecy that Jehu believed he was destined to fulfill. The story of Naboth's vineyard isn't just about a piece of land. It's the spark that ignites the fire of revolution, showing how the abuse of power against one innocent person can lead to the downfall of an entire dynasty. So, Jehu's story isn't simple. He's a complex figure, a liberator for some, a violent executioner for others. He was an instrument of divine justice, yet also a man driven by ambition. His story makes us think about leadership, justice, and how history is often forged in violence. It's a powerful reminder that the choices of leaders have consequences that can echo through generations. Thanks for watching, and if you found this story as fascinating as I do, make sure to follow 4 more deep dives into history's most compelling tales. In the ancient kingdom of Israel, a story unfolded that would echo through millennia. A tale of greed, power, and divine justice. It all began with a simple piece of land, Naboth's vineyard, nestled next to the royal palace. Caught the eye of King Ahab. He wanted it not for necessity, but for a vegetable garden. He offered Naboth a better vineyard or a fair price in silver. A reasonable offer, you might think. But for Naboth, this land was more than just soil and vines. It was his inheritance, a sacred trust passed down through generations, and according to divine law, it was not to be sold. Naboth's refusal, rooted in deep respect for family tradition and God's law, sent King Ahab into a pout. The mighty monarch, whose power seemed limitless, was frustrated by a common landowner. He went home sulking, refusing to eat. This is where the story takes a dark and sinister turn with the entrance of his wife, the manipulative and ruthless Queen Jezebel. Seeing her husband's distress, she scoffed at his weakness. "Are you the king of Israel or not?" she asked. "Get up and eat. I'll get you the vineyard of Naboth." Jezebel then orchestrated a diabolical plan. Using the king's royal seal, she wrote letters to the elders and nobles in Naboth's city. She commanded them to proclaim a fast and set up a sham trial. 2 scoundrels were hired to bear false witness, accusing Naboth of cursing both God and the king, a capital offense. The plan worked flawlessly. The innocent landowner was dragged outside the city and stoned to death. It was a cold-blooded judicial murder, an act of blatant tyranny that defied all human and divine law. Once the news of Naboth's death reached her, Jezebel coolly informed her husband, "Go and take possession of the vineyard you wanted. Naboth is no longer alive, he is dead." Ahab, instigated by his ruthless wife, didn't hesitate. He went down to the vineyard, now stained with the blood of its rightful owner, to claim it as his own. This ultimate act of injustice, however, did not go unnoticed. A higher power was watching, and a divine response was coming. The prophet Elijah was sent by God to confront the king. The scene was thick with dramatic tension as Elijah found Ahab in the very vineyard he had stolen. The king, startled, called out, "So you have found me, my enemy?" Elijah's reply was chilling and direct. As a spokesperson for divine justice, he pronounced a terrible curse upon Ahab and his wicked queen. He declared that disaster would befall Ahab's house and that the dogs would lick up Ahab's blood in the very place where they had licked up Naboth's. And as for Jezebel, the dogs would devour her by the wall of Jezreel. Elijah's words were not mere threats. They were a divine decree, sealing the fate of the corrupt royal dynasty. This powerful episode serves as a timeless metaphor for the dangers of unchecked power and greed. Naboth's vineyard became more than just a plot of land. It transformed into a symbol of integrity and divine justice, standing firm against human corruption. It represents the eternal struggle of the individual against the oppressive forces of the state. The story of Naboth's vineyard is a stark reminder that even seemingly small acts of greed can trigger catastrophic events, altering the course of history. It's a tale that continues to resonate today, warning us about the corrosive nature of avarice and reminding us of the absolute necessity of justice in any society. It teaches us that no injustice, no matter how cleverly concealed or powerfully executed, escapes the ultimate judgment. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, please like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most powerful tales. In her final act of defiance, she chose to face her executioner with all the pomp and circumstance of her royal position. The deposed monarch's decision to paint her eyes and arrange her hair was not mere vanity. It was a bold statement, a last act of rebellion against her approaching fate. By presenting herself in all her royal splendor, she mocked fear and defied the divine vengeance that Jehu represented. From her window, the queen looked down, staring at her executioner with disdain. Her posture was that of someone who, even in the face of certain death, refused to bow or show weakness. This final gesture of bravado was characteristic of a woman who had lived her life challenging norms and conventions. The words she directed at Jehu were as sharp as daggers, filled with irony and contempt, calling him Zimri, murderer of his master. She compared him to a past usurper, questioning his legitimacy and authority. It was a final, desperate attempt to undermine her executioner's confidence and perhaps sow seeds of doubt among his followers. This verbal confrontation between the queen and the general was more than just a personal clash. It represented the collision of two worldviews, two different interpretations of power and divine authority. On one side stood the stubborn defender of foreign gods. On the other, the self-proclaimed executor of the will of the God of Israel. It was a battle of wills played out on a public stage, with the fate of a kingdom hanging in the balance. The deposed queen's defiant attitude in the face of imminent death can be seen as a testament to her strength of character, however misguided it may have been. Even in her final moments, she remained true to her rebellious and indomitable nature, refusing to show a shred of repentance or fear. She would not give her enemies the satisfaction of seeing her broken. But this last act of defiance, though impressive in its audacity, did not alter the course of prophetic events. The queen's bravado only served to underscore the inevitability of the divine judgment that was about to be fulfilled. Her end was sealed, no matter how courageous or haughty she appeared. The words of the prophets had gone out, and they would not return void. Ultimately, the scene at the window became iconic, forever representing the moment when the old regime, personified by the obstinate queen, faced its final downfall. It was the dramatic prelude to the final act of a life marked by ambition, manipulation, and defiance of the established divine order. The moment Jehu gave the order, her own eunuchs, perhaps sensing the shift in power or fearing for their own lives, turned against her. They threw her from the window, and her life ended abruptly on the street below. Jehu, in a final act of dominance, trampled her body under his horse's hooves. Later, when he sent men to give her a proper burial, acknowledging her royal blood, they found that the dogs had consumed most of her body, just as the prophet Elijah had foretold. Nothing remained but her skull, her feet, and the palms of her hands. The prophecy was fulfilled to the letter. This dramatic end serves as a powerful narrative about the consequences of hubris and the clash between earthly power and divine will. The queen's story, culminating in this final, defiant scene, has echoed through history as a cautionary tale. It's a stark reminder that even the most powerful rulers are not beyond the reach of judgment, and that defiance in the face of destiny can lead to a tragic and desolate end. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as compelling as we do, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the dramatic events of history. We'll see you in the next one. The infamous queen's fall came with surprising swiftness. Jehu, the executor of divine will, didn't hesitate when faced with the deposed monarch's challenge. With a brief, sharp command, he called for the palace servants to choose a side in this final conflict. The response from the queen's own people was as swift as it was shocking. Those who had bowed to her will for years now turned against her. This sudden shift in loyalty revealed the fragile nature of power built on fear and manipulation. In just a few moments, the once powerful sovereign found herself utterly abandoned by her closest allies. The act of throwing the queen from the window was more than a simple execution. It was a symbol. It represented the literal and metaphorical fall of a corrupt regime. The woman who had long manipulated the fates of an entire nation now found herself at the mercy of the very forces she once controlled. The impact of her body hitting the ground echoed like a final punctuation mark in the story of tyranny and idolatry she had come to represent. The queen's blood splattering across the palace walls marked the end of an era and the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy. It was a stark visual testimony to the divine justice that had been long awaited. The scene that followed was shockingly brutal, even by the standards of that time. The horses, becoming involuntary instruments of this judgment, trampled the fallen body. This visceral image served as a powerful and unforgettable reminder of the fate reserved for those who defied divine order. Jehu, having witnessed his enemy's fall, showed no remorse or hesitation. His pragmatic attitude towards the queen's death reflected the conviction of a man who saw himself as an instrument of a higher will. For him, this wasn't an act of personal revenge, but the fulfillment of a sacred duty. The victorious general, after ensuring his adversary was dead, turned his attention to more mundane matters. His request for food and drink immediately after the event might seem insensitive to us today, but in that context, it represented the normalization of power after a period of intense chaos and corruption. It was a signal that order was being restored. It was only after this brief moment of pause that Jehu remembered the queen's royal lineage. She was a king's daughter, he commanded, so give her a proper burial. This small act of respect, even in death, highlights the complexities of the era. It wasn't just about vengeance. It was about re-establishing a new, more just order, even if it meant acknowledging the status of a fallen foe. But when his men went to carry out the order, they found that divine judgment had already run its course. Only the skull, feet, and palms of her hands remained. The rest had been devoured by dogs, just as the prophet Elijah had foretold years earlier. In the plot of ground at Jezreel, dogs will devour Jezebel's flesh, he had said. The prophecy was fulfilled to the letter. When Jehu's men returned and told him what they'd found, he simply confirmed, "This is the word of the Lord," which he spoke through his servant Elijah. This shocking conclusion served as the ultimate confirmation of his mission. It wasn't just a political coup. It was the hand of God at work, bringing a dark chapter of history to a decisive and prophesied end. The tale of the queen's fall is a grim but powerful lesson on the transient nature of power and the inescapable reach of justice. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most dramatic moments. See you next time. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today we are rediving deep into one of the most dramatic and shocking stories from ancient history, the downfall of Queen Jezebel. It's a tale of power, prophecy, and a truly gruesome end. After Jezebel was thrown from the window, Jehu, the man who brought about her demise, made a surprising command. He ordered his men to bury her with the honors due to a princess. This is fascinating because it shows a certain complexity in his character. Even while carrying out what he saw as a divine mission, he still acknowledged the social and political status she once held. It's a small detail, but it adds a layer of depth to the events unfolding. However, things took a turn for the bizarre. When Jehu's men went to carry out the burial order, they were met with a horrific sight. All that was left of the once powerful queen were her skull, her feet, and the palms of her hands. The rest of her body had vanished. This wasn't some random act of scavengers. It was the chilling, literal fulfillment of a prophecy made years earlier by the prophet Elijah. He had declared that dogs would devour Jezebel's body in the plot of land at Jezreel. The image of dogs consuming the fallen queen's body is a grim final chapter to a life defined by ruthless ambition and cruelty. It was the ultimate humiliation, the final act in a tragedy that started with a thirst for power and ended in the most degrading way imaginable. Jezebel's fate became a powerful and enduring lesson about the consequences of pride and wickedness, a story that has echoed through the centuries as a stark warning. Jezebel's fall wasn't just the end of a corrupt ruler. It was the stunning fulfillment of a divine prophecy. Elijah's words, which had hung in the air for years, came true with terrifying precision. This outcome was seen as powerful proof of the infallibility of the divine word. The prophecy was incredibly specific. dogs would devour her in Jezreel. The discovery of only her skull, feet, and hands wasn't just a grim coincidence. It was the exact meticulous realization of those prophetic words. This reinforced the belief that a higher power was intervening directly in human affairs. The symbolism of her death is profound. In ancient Hebrew culture, dogs were often seen as impure animals. For her body to be devoured by them represented total divine rejection. It was as if even in death, she was denied a dignified rest and was cast out from the community. This form of divine justice served as a potent reminder of the consequences of rebellion against God. Jezebel's story transformed into a living parable about the dangers of pride, idolatry, and the abuse of power. It's a narrative that shows how actions have consequences and how unchecked ambition can lead to a devastating end. Her gruesome fate would serve as a solemn warning for generations to come, testament to the idea that no one is above accountability. The story of Jezebel is more than just a historical account. It's a timeless lesson on morality and justice. What do you think about this story? Is it a tale of divine justice or a brutal example of political overthrow? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you found this story as fascinating as I do, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into history's most compelling tales. See you next time. The story of Jezebel's fall is more than just an ancient tale. It's a powerful moral lesson that speaks directly to us today, transcending its historical setting. It shows us how power, when corrupted, leads not just to the downfall of one person, but can poison an entire nation. The Queen's journey is a classic case study on the dangers of leadership without a strong ethical compass. One of the most powerful takeaways from this story is how useless human arrogance is when faced with a higher power or a greater truth. Jezebel, who seemed untouchable for so long, wielding immense power, was ultimately helpless before her final judgment. Her dramatic fall is a stark reminder that all earthly authority, no matter how great it seems, is temporary and accountable to something bigger than itself. Think about how quickly her allies abandoned her. This tells us a lot about the fragile nature of alliances built on fear and intimidation. As soon as the tables turned, those who had followed her out of fear were nowhere to be found. This part of the story serves as a critical warning against building relationships, whether in politics, business, or our personal lives, on a foundation of coercion and manipulation. True loyalty and strength come from respect, not fear. Another fascinating aspect is the fulfillment of the prophecy against her. Years passed between Elijah's proclamation and its dramatic realization. This is a profound lesson in patience and faith in justice. It reminds us that things don't always happen on our timeline. For anyone facing what seems like an insurmountable injustice, this offers a comforting thought. Righteousness and truth often take time, but they will eventually prevail. Jezebel's entire story is a call for integrity and moral responsibility, especially for those in positions of leadership. It vividly illustrates how the choices of one individual can ripple outwards, creating massive consequences that affect not just their own destiny, but the future of an entire community or society. It's a powerful demonstration of the weight of leadership. This biblical narrative remains incredibly relevant, provides deep insights into the timeless dynamics of power, corruption, and the consequences that follow our actions. It encourages us to look inward and reflect on our own values and choices. Are we building our lives and relationships on solid ground? Are we leading with integrity? Ultimately, the story of Jezebel, though rooted in a distant past, acts as a mirror. It reflects the same complexities of ambition and corruption that we see in our own world. It challenges us to live with integrity, to be mindful of our influence, and to align our actions with higher ethical principles. It's a timeless reminder that true power lies not in dominance, but in character. Thanks for watching. If you found this reflection valuable, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever heard the story of Queen Jezebel? It's not just an ancient tale. It's packed with lessons that are incredibly relevant today. One of the biggest takeaways is the sheer danger of abusing power. Jezebel used her authority as queen to bend the law and manipulate people just to get what she wanted. It's a chilling reminder of how some modern leaders can twist systems for their personal gain, and it really highlights why we need strong checks and balances in any government. Then there's the theme of arrogance. Jezebel's downfall shows us how thinking you're invincible can completely blind you, even when disaster is right around the corner. She was so overconfident, even in her final moments. This attitude is something we see time and time again with powerful figures just before they fall. It's a powerful warning against the kind of hubris that often comes with being in charge. Jezebel's story also serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of leading people down the wrong path. Her promotion of idol worship and immoral behavior didn't just corrupt her own life. It had a devastating impact on the entire nation. Think about that in today's world, where influencers and leaders have a massive reach through social media. The power to influence comes with a huge responsibility, and this story shows what happens when that responsibility is ignored. But the story isn't all negative. It also shines a light on the incredible importance of personal integrity, especially when you're under pressure. There are figures in the story like Naboth, who stood up to Jezebel and refused to compromise his principles, even when facing the full force of royal power. He chose his integrity over his safety. His moral courage is a powerful example for us today, in a world where it's often so much easier to just go along with the crowd than to stand up for what's right. And finally, consider the nature of loyalty. When Jezebel was about to meet her end, her allies abandoned her in a heartbeat. This shows us how fragile alliances built on fear or convenience really are. These aren't true friendships. They're temporary arrangements that crumble the moment the power dynamics shift. We see this play out in politics and business all the time, where loyalty is often just a strategy, not a genuine connection. So, the story of Jezebel isn't just about a wicked queen from long ago. It's a timeless lesson about power, pride, influence, integrity, and the true meaning of loyalty. It pushes us to look at our own world and ask tough questions about our leaders and even ourselves. Thanks for watching, and if you found this interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this. In the complex world of politics and power, where loyalties can shift as quickly as the political tides, ancient stories often hold the most relevant lessons. Take the story of Jezebel. It's a powerful reminder of the importance of building relationships based on shared values, not just fleeting interests. When alliances are built on shaky ground, they crumble when the pressure is on. The dramatic fulfillment of the prophecy against Jezebel also underscores a timeless truth. Actions have consequences. In our culture of instant gratification, it's easy to forget this. We want immediate results, immediate feedback. But this narrative shows us that the real effects of our choices might not show up right away. They can unfold over time, encouraging us to take a more long-term view of our ethical and moral decisions. Think about it. The small choices we make today are planting the seeds for our future. Jezebel's story also brings up fascinating questions about the role of religion and spirituality in the public square. Her energetic promotion of foreign cults in ancient Israel is so different from today's debates about the separation of church and state, or how religious beliefs should influence public policy. It pushes us to think about finding the right balance between religious freedom and maintaining social harmony. It's a conversation that is as relevant now as it was thousands of years ago. For anyone in a position of leadership, or even aspiring to be an influencer, Jezebel's life is a sobering case study. It highlights the extreme dangers of power that isn't balanced with wisdom and compassion. Her story vividly illustrates how leadership without a strong ethical core can lead to destruction, not just for the leader, but for the entire community they lead. It's a profound call to embrace responsibility and integrity whenever we're given authority, no matter how big or small. Ultimately, Jezebel's story isn't just about a long-lost queen. It's a mirror that challenges us to examine our own lives and choices. It prompts us to ask ourselves, what kind of legacy am I building? What influence do I have on the people around me? Are my actions aligned with higher principles? In our own era, filled with moral and ethical gray areas, this ancient narrative still offers incredibly valuable insights for navigating the challenges we face every day. So let's make this personal for a moment. Take a second and reflect. What kind of influence do you have in your social circle? Do your actions inspire your friends and family to be better people, or do they perhaps lead them down more questionable paths? We often underestimate our own impact, but remember, each of us has the power to be a positive force or a negative one in our own spheres of influence. What about the power you hold? Whether it's at home, with your family, at work in your team, or in your local community, how are you using it? Is it primarily for your own benefit? or do you wield it for the common good? This story teaches us that a person's true character isn't revealed when they're struggling, but when they're at the top, when they have the power to make things happen. Finally, think about the alliances and friendships you form. Are they built on a solid foundation of shared values and mutual respect? Or are they more about convenience and what you can get out of them? The story of Jezebel is a stark warning that transactional relationships are fragile and often lead to betrayal. Building connections based on genuine, shared principles creates a support system that can withstand any storm. The lessons are ancient, but their application is immediate. What will you do with them? Thanks for watching. If this video made you think, please give it a like and subscribe for more content that dives deep into the timeless questions of life. See you in the next one. Have you ever thought about the company you keep? Think about Jezebel from the ancient stories. She was powerful, influential, but when things got tough, where were her allies? It makes you wonder, right? What kind of relationships are you building in your own life? Are they built on momentary convenience or on true, lasting loyalty? Now, let's take it a step further. How do you react to the injustices you see around you? It's so easy to stay silent, isn't it? You might be afraid of the consequences, or maybe it just feels more convenient to look the other way. But what if we chose courage instead? What if we decided to stand up for what's right, even if it's hard? Jezebel's story isn't just about a queen from long ago, it's a mirror reflecting our own choices today. Think about your integrity. When you're faced with a really difficult decision, do you stick to your principles? Or do you find yourself bending to the pressure of the moment just to make things easier? These aren't simple questions, I know. They're tough, but they are so important. The narrative of Jezebel challenges us to look inward, to be better, to make wiser choices, and to use whatever influence we have for good, not for harm. So here's the big question. What will you do with this knowledge? How can this ancient story actually change your modern life? It's easy to hear a story and just move on, but the real power lies in applying its lessons. The power to make a positive difference is literally in your hands. It's in the small decisions you make every single day. Remember, every choice we make, every action we take, it's like a ripple in a pond. It doesn't just shape our own destiny. It has a profound impact on everyone around us, whether we realize it or not. By learning from the mistakes of the past, we can actively build a better, brighter future for ourselves and for the next generation. It's about being intentional. So, are you ready to take these lessons to heart? Are you ready to apply them in your own life? If you're reinterested in exploring more of these fascinating stories that can genuinely transform your perspective and enrich your personal journey, I'd love for you to join our community. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and make sure to turn on those notifications. That way you won't miss out on our next deep dive. Together, we can continue to unravel the mysteries of the past and use that wisdom to build a wiser, more compassionate future for all of us. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.